What if I told you the world's most influential church was actually a marketing machine? That worship services were focus grouped? That sermons were A/B tested for viral potential? Hillsong didn't just fall, it was exposed. And what investigators found should terrify every believer who's ever trusted a celebrity pastor. The year was 1983, Sydney, Australia. Brian Houston took over a small church from his father. 45 people in folding chairs. Nobody knew they were watching the birth of a religious empire. By 2019, Hillsong wasn't a church. It was an industry. 100,000 people packed into services every Sunday. Not in one location, across 6 continents. The numbers were staggering. Annual revenue hit $100 million. Their music generated 50 million streams monthly on Spotify. Songs like Oceans and What a Beautiful Name weren't just worship songs. They were global hits. But the conferences weren't just about worship. Hillsong Conference Sydney pulled in 30,000 attendees. Tickets cost $299. Do the math. That's $9 million in 1 week. The production budget rivaled Coachella. LED walls the size of buildings, pyrotechnics, celebrity guests. This wasn't church. This was entertainment. The formula was deliberate. Market research showed millennials wanted 3 things: authenticity, experience, and Instagram moments. Hillsong delivered all 3. Pastors wore Supreme hoodies and Yeezys. Worship leaders looked like indie band frontmen. Every service was designed to be filmed, shared, posted. Then the celebrities started showing up. Justin Bieber, Selena Gomez, Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving. The Kardashians. They didn't just attend, they got baptized. On camera. By pastors who looked more like fashion models than ministers. Lentz became Bieber's spiritual advisor and best friend. His Instagram hit 700,000 followers. Pastors were becoming influencers. The New York City campus opened in 2010. Within 5 years, 8,000 people attended weekly. Standing room only. Manhattan's young professionals lined up around the block, not for a club, for church. The services happened in nightclub venues. Irving Plaza, the Hammerstein Ballroom. Places where rock stars performed on Saturday became sanctuaries on Sunday. Behind the scenes, teams analyzed every metric. Song selection was based on YouTube analytics. Sermon topics were chosen by social media engagement rates. They tracked shares, likes, comments. And if a sermon didn't hit 10,000 views in 48 hours, they rewrote the formula. What nobody saw coming was how the money really worked. Volunteers ran everything: sound, lights, children's programs, security. Hundreds of unpaid workers at every campus. They called it serving the house. But documents would later reveal something darker. While volunteers worked for free, the church spent $1.3 million on pastors' luxury travel in a single year. Private jets, 5-star hotels, black car services. The music was the real goldmine. Hillsong's publishing rights were worth an estimated $50 million. Every time a church anywhere played Oceans, Hillsong collected royalties. 60,000 churches worldwide were essentially paying licensing fees. The worship had been monetized. But in November 2020, everything changed with a single Instagram post. At Lentz's phone buzzed at 2 a.m. November 4, 2020. A text from Brian Houston. "We need to talk." By sunrise, the man who baptized Justin Bieber was unemployed. The official statement used careful language. Moral failures. Inappropriate relationship. But the New York Post had specifics. A 5-month affair with a 34-year-old designer named Ranin Karim. She told everything. The celebrity pastor who preached purity had been living a double life. Lentz wasn't just any pastor, he was the prototype. The blueprint. GQ called him the hippest pastor in America. He sat courtside at NBA games with Kevin Durant, vacationed with the Biebers. His wardrobe cost more than most people's cars: $1,000 sneakers, $400 t-shirts, Saint Laurent leather jackets. But former staff started talking. What they revealed changed everything. "We worked 70-hour weeks," one volunteer told Vanity Fair. "No pay, no benefits." Meanwhile, Carl flew first class to preach about sacrifice. Another described mandatory 5 a.m. setup, calls for Sunday service. Miss one, you're out. Question leadership, you're rebellious. Complain about conditions, you're attacking God's anointed. The exploitation had a pattern. Young people moved to expensive cities to serve the church. They were told it was an honor, a calling, but internal documents showed something else. While volunteers struggled to pay rent, Hillsong NYC spent $62,000 per month on pastor housing allowances. Lentz lived in a Montclair mansion. His nanny made more than most staff pastors. Then Reed Bogard spoke up. The former Hillsong Dallas pastor went public with financial records. Or the church credit card statements were damning. $160,000 in luxury travel, first-class flights to Cancun, shopping sprees at Gucci, all labeled ministry expenses. When congregants gave their tithes, they thought they were funding mission work. They were funding millionaire lifestyles. The Dallas campus was next to implode. March 2021, Hillsong, Dallas suddenly paused operations. No warning, no explanation, just an email to members saying services were cancelled. Behind closed doors, an investigation had uncovered what leadership called significant financial mismanagement. Translation: pastors were treating church funds like personal bank accounts. The Bogards resigned, but not quietly. They hired lawyers, claimed they were scapegoats, said the problems went all the way to Sydney. Their accusations triggered something bigger. Former staff from multiple campuses started comparing notes. The stories were identical: toxic leadership, financial abuse, spiritual manipulation. Investigative journalists smelled blood. The Roy's report published leaked emails. Christianity Today obtained financial documents. Vanity Fair embedded reporters. What they found was systematic. This wasn't isolated bad actors, this was institutional rot. Phoenix pastor Terry Christ left abruptly. No explanation. Boston campus shuttered. 9 campuses across America started hemorrhaging members. Sunday attendance dropped 40% in 6 months. But the worst revelation was about the volunteers. Documents revealed Hillsong's labor model. They called it the Honor Code. Volunteers signed agreements. 20 hours minimum per week. No compensation, no complaints. Some lived in church housing, overcrowded apartments where 8 people shared 2 bedrooms. Rent was deducted from their love offerings. They paid to work for free. A former NYC volunteer showed receipts. She worked 1,847 hours in 1 year, unpaid. At minimum wage, that's $27,000 of free labor. Multiply that by hundreds of volunteers across dozens of campuses. Hillsong was built on a workforce that would be illegal in any other industry. But the founder's confession shocked even investigators. Brian Houston had been keeping his own secrets. 2 women came forward with complaints about his behavior: inappropriate text messages, unwanted advances, incidents in hotel rooms after conferences. The Hillsong board launched an investigation. What they found went back decades. Houston blamed sleeping pills and anxiety medication, and said he didn't remember the incidents, but there were screenshots, credit card records, witness statements. The man who built an empire on moral authority had none left. March 18, 2022. Brian Houston resigned. The founder was gone. But the investigations were just beginning. The Australian Charities Commission doesn't usually make headlines, but in March 2022, they opened a case file that would destroy what was left of Hillsong's credibility. The investigation wasn't about faith. It was about money. Regulators found $83 million in undisclosed transfers. Money moving between Hillsong entities like a shell game. Church funds paying for board members' vacations, tax-exempt donations, funding for profit ventures. The charity status that saved Hillsong millions in taxes was now in jeopardy. When regulators looked at the books, they found something worse. Hillsong had been operating a parallel economy. The church owned record labels, publishing companies, real estate portfolios, conference venues, all tax-exempt, all generating massive profits. The worship music alone brought in $21 million annually. But where did that money go? Not to missions, not to charity. Internal documents showed 82% went to operational expenses. Translation: salaries, travel and infrastructure for the Hillsong machine. August 2023. Brian Houston stood trial in Sydney. The charge: concealing his father's child sexual abuse. Frank Houston had confessed to abusing a 7-year-old boy. Brian knew. He kept it quiet, paid the victim $10,000 for silence. The court found him not guilty on a technicality. But the testimony revealed something crucial. The cover-up culture started at the very top, from the very beginning. Then came the exodus. Hillsong Phoenix, gone. Hillsong Dallas, shuttered. Hillsong Atlanta, disbanded. In 18 months, the US presence collapsed from 16 campuses to 4. Each closure followed the same pattern. Abrupt announcement. No explanation. Members left scrambling. The San Francisco campus didn't even wait for permission. January 2025. They voted to separate, rebranded overnight, took their building, their congregation, and walked away. The email to Sydney was 2 sentences. "We're done. Don't contact us." Social media told the real story. #HillsongSurvivor started trending. Former members shared receipts. Therapy bills from spiritual trauma. Bank statements showing years of tithing while living in poverty. Screenshots of leaders demanding loyalty while hiding affairs. The hashtag generated 14 million impressions in 1 week. Today, only 4 campuses remain operational in America. But even those are bleeding. Hillsong NYC, Binley, once 8,000 strong, now averages 300 attendees. The Connecticut campus meets in a rented school auditorium. The remaining California location can't afford its lease. Internal emails project all US operations will cease by 2026. The music revenue is drying up. Churches are refusing to pay licensing fees. Spotify streams dropped 67%. New albums are flopping. The sound that defined a generation of worship has become radioactive. Worship leaders are removing Hillsong songs from set lists. Publishers are terminating contracts. The Australian headquarters is in crisis mode. Staff layoffs hit 30%. The Sydney campus, at once 20,000 members, now reports 6,000. The building sits half empty on Sundays. The youth program that launched global careers can't fill a classroom. But here's what should terrify every churchgoer. Hillsong wasn't unique. They were just the biggest, the loudest, the most visible. Right now, in mega churches across America, the same patterns are playing out. Celebrity pastors, unpaid labor, hidden finances. ND as for staff. The Hillsong playbook has been copied, pasted, and renamed. The collapse exposed a formula. Build a brand, attract celebrities, create emotional experiences, monetize everything. Hide the finances, silence the critics, repeat until exposed. The warning signs were always there. When worship becomes a product, when pastors become celebrities, when churches become corporations, the fall is inevitable. 30,000 people didn't leave Hillsong. They escaped it. But if you think this only happens in mega churches, you're not paying attention. The small church in your town with the charismatic pastor and the locked financial records, the youth group that demands free labor for the kingdom, the worship team that prioritizes production over prayer. The pattern is spreading, and the next Hillsong is already being built. They just haven't been caught yet.